All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about a really powerful and honestly often misunderstood internal force. It's that part of us that drives some pretty radical change. And, it's an energy that's born from these moments of just absolute certainty. And sometimes, yeah, total destruction.
It all starts with a sound. A sound you just know means a confrontation is coming, and it's coming now. There was no hiding. The house was long, the hallway was a straight shot, and my father, well, he was on his way.
The thing is, the energy coming up those stairs, it wasn't about having a conversation, no. It was completely fueled by this conviction that his opinion was the only truth. And that's really what happens when someone refuses to adjust their worldview, right? They try to control everything and everyone around them instead. They don't ask questions. They just assume. They judge, and then they react. I tried to put up this, useless little barricade, just holding the door half open, trying to pretend like everything was fine. But that unbending certainty, it met my resistance and it pushed right through. The handle was ripped out of my hand, and the whole feeling in the room just splintered. So the door flies open, and the two boys who were hiding behind it, they just bolt, but there was no getting away. The room just exploded into this blur of desperate movement, and it was met by a fist that was already flying through the air. And that one punch connected. Blood sprayed. Suddenly the air filled with the smell of iron. And that right there, that was a physical result of a certainty that refused to bend. So instead, it broke something else. That destructive power, that absolute unbending certainty, it actually has a name. We call it an archetype, the Malevolent Destroyer. But here's the thing, it's not just about what happens outside of you. And this is where it gets really interesting. That exact same destructive energy, it can be turned inward. It's the part of us that can identify where we're the ones who are stuck, where we refuse to bend, and it breaks those patterns on purpose. It's about using disruption as a tool for your own evolution. Now, this whole idea, this powerful concept, it doesn't just exist on its own in a vacuum. The Malevolent Destroyer is actually just one of 12 core archetypes. A good way to think of them is like ribs. They form this kind of creative skeleton that gives your inner world its structure. These are the foundational pieces we work with to find our own balance. See, each of these ribs, from inception all the way to foundation, can exist in what's called a fracture state. And that's just a point where we're leaking energy. So for the disruption archetype we're focused on today, that fracture happens when we, as it says here, maintain agreements that are literally suffocating us. Okay, so that brings us to the two sides of this archetype. Every single rib has a fracture state, where we're stuck. And then it has a cohesion state, where we're in flow. With disruption, it's really the difference between being stuck in stagnation and totally embracing a decisive truth. This lays out the choice perfectly, doesn't it? On the one hand, you have the fracture state. That's all about protecting a comfort that's built on a lie, justifying being stuck just to avoid a fight. But cohesion, on the other hand, is about ending what no longer fits. It's about letting the fallout from the truth actually clear the path forward, and letting that truth build your new reality. And this brings us right back to that violent certainty from the beginning of the story. I mean, that kind of force can absolutely destroy you, no question. But when you learn how to wield it consciously, when you actually turn it inward, it stops being about controlling the world, and it starts being about building a new one for yourself. So the big question is, how do we actually use this? How do we take this incredibly intense, destructive energy and turn it into a catalyst for conscious evolution? Seriously, take a second and think about it. What in your life has become totally rigid, fixed, and just unmoving? Is it a job? A relationship? Maybe a belief you've held forever? What do you think would happen if you applied that same decisive, unapologetic force to that situation? So the path of the destroyer, it follows a pretty clear process. First, you've got to identify the stagnation. Step 2, you have to break that pattern deliberately. You stop adapting to its limits, and you reshape the environment instead. Third, and this is crucial, you release the need to control the outcome. And finally, number 4, you allow that very destruction to reveal new possibilities, new timelines that you just couldn't see before. And that's the ultimate point of the Malevolent Destroyer. It's not about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's about catalytic truth. It is the beautiful, sometimes violent, but absolutely necessary act of shattering an illusion, just to clear the way for what's real. So I'll leave you with this. What in your life is refusing to bend?